As Brian introduced me, so my name is Arani. I'm a manager with a consulting firm based out of Toronto. I've worked with other consulting firms in my previous career as well. I worked with a lot of different types of companies. So, it ranges from startups, small, medium business to much larger global banks, right? And when it comes to startups or small business, a few things that I like to work on is around their strategy consulting. So what that means is I basically help them review their current program, or if they don't have one, make one from scratch and help them actually build out their cybersecurity controls. Now, today we're going to kind of talk about few different things, right? So we're going to start with, again, as with any other presentations out there, we're going to start with some trends. I'm going to focus on what Government of Canada is saying about cybersecurity. I'm going to focus on some few very interesting facts that I actually researched out. We're also going to talk about a few challenges that I have generally seen with my clients when they want to start out with a cybersecurity program. We're also going to talk about what goes in a cybersecurity 101, right? So if you were to today create a program from scratch, what are the different elements that needs to be there, right? We'll talk about the teams, and then I'll leave you with some resources, how to go about the next steps, and so on. And throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please type it in the chat box. I'm able to see it right now, but later on we can connect and we can talk about it. Okay, so let's start with these statistics that I collected from Government of Canada, right? So I present three main statistics. The first one that talks about is around how much businesses are actually spending today when it comes to cybersecurity, right? And on the screen you can see they have actually divided by large, medium-sized business and small business, and these numbers are actually from the survey that they did. What is interesting is obviously, large businesses are spending somewhere around $1 million in their overall cybersecurity program. That's on an average, and then small businesses around 44,000, and on an average it's 78,000. Now, having said that, I actually worked with clients with various size budgets, right? I've worked with clients who has invested overall 25,000 in their entire lifetime around security controls, and with clients who have budgets upward of 50 million to kind of spend on cyber. Really depends on the size that you're talking about. Depends on what you're trying to protect at the end of the day. One thing that I would note is, cost often becomes a big barrier of entry when it comes to cybersecurity, right? And I'll discuss why is that in a bit. We talk next about one statistics, which 1/5 of the Canadian businesses experienced impactful cybersecurity incident, right? And this is very true, right? So when you get hacked, everybody talks about it, right? If you're not hacked, if you're not in the news, nobody's highlighting, unless you've done something spectacular. But if you get breached, everybody will talk about you, right? And that's when spotlight comes on you, and that's when we have seen a lot of our clients, not only small business but big clients as well, drive their cybersecurity growth up after they got breached, right? Which is again not really the ideal thing to do, but that's the reality. The last statistic that we talked about is 2/3 of businesses allowing their employees to use personal devices for business purpose. There are multiple reasons for that, right? One is ease of use. Engineers are often used to using their personal devices for work. Everything is on cloud, so why not? When we go and see these kind of things in our clients, the general reason we don't talk about it is when personal devices are in play, you don't know exactly what kind of controls they are putting on that device, right? So they may not have an antivirus in place, they may not have strong passwords in place, they may not have encryption in place, because again, that's their personal device. They don't need that kind of security for that, right? But when they're using that same laptop or same tablet to access your company's resources, you end up extending your attack surface, because now the hackers can actually hack into that personal device and then get access to your company's network. And this has happened before. This is not something that's new. This has happened with a lot of big names in the industry. So we have I've personally done investigations on a lot of incidents which actually happened because someone's personal device got hacked at the end of the day. Moving on, we will talk about now this challenge, the cost challenge that we talk about. I'm going to talk about three major challenges that I see while starting a cybersecurity program. The first being cybersecurity is a cost center at the end of the day. It's not a profit center, right? We all know that, right? It's security. These are non-functional requirement. It's a cost center. It's not going to go out and get you new revenue. It's not going to acquire a new customer, right? However, one thing is important to differentiate over here is cybersecurity or security will help you preserve that revenue, will help you protect that business value, right? So today, if you have say 100 customers, 100 paying customers, it's not because of your security initiatives that they actually came to your company, but they're going to be retained and they're going to be protected because of your cybersecurity controls. Tomorrow, if you get breached, they might leave the business and go to someone else, right? So it protects the business revenue and the value, right? Uh, Oftentimes, management do not see a tangible value from cybersecurity programs because a lot of these controls are inherently placed within the everyday life. So, for example, a lot of us use multi-factor authentication or VPNs to log in. We don't see anything on the encryption, right? We don't see anything around the data protection. However, those controls are already in place. So you don't see, management doesn't see a tangible value out of it. And this ties with the problem with reporting as well. And those are more broader discussions. We'll probably leave that for another day. Uh, the second fact that I challenge that I've seen is security is the last thing on people's mind when they talk about product or application development or in the business. Recently we have gone to a lot of startups, and the reason they have actually come to us for developing their cybersecurity program because they have actually been told by their customers that they're trying to get into, and these customers may be large big five banks and so on, that they want to have these kind of security controls in place before their customers starts purchasing services from them, right? So that cybersecurity becomes an important work, but it's often the last milestone that they want to get done before the go live. As an example, over the Easter weekend, I was actually working with a startup client of mine. They are going live this week, and we actually spent that entire weekend, last weekend, me and my team, we actually spent upping the security controls, implementing all the controls before it actually went live. So it happened at the end of the day. Uh, then and the last point that we talk about is too much FUD. So FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt. There are too many products out in the market. There are too many news trends out in the market where where business might feel confused as to where to start with, right? Uh, I think cybersecurity is just one space where things change every day. There are new trends coming up every day. There are new innovations happening every day. It's very hard to keep up with it if you are not in that business. So, especially for a business who is trying to start out in cybersecurity, it's a problem, right? Because they're confused as to where to start. Where do you start with? That's basically our next slide, right? So this is how to get started with Cyber 101, right? So again, as we always see, grounded to the basics, right? Talk about a framework or grounded to some principles at the end of the day. So one of the principles that I like to stick with is the NIST CSF. So this stands for, so NIST is a body out of US which talks about a lot of standardization, a lot of frameworks for security. And what basically kind of goes in is the cybersecurity framework, which is divided into 5 domains that you can see on the screen. We'll dive into the domains at a later date, but NIST CSF, if you guys haven't heard about it, go check it out. That's definitely an important thing. Everybody's adopting NIST CSF. A lot of our clients, again, big clients, small clients, want that kind of a framework in their organization. It's a really good starting point. Second, enable the business, right? Understand what the business is, what you're trying to protect. If you don't know what you're trying to protect, if you don't know what exactly you're protecting or what exactly you're putting the controls against, you will end up either putting less controls or putting controls that are overly unnecessary or overly intrusive, which might hamper productivity, which might not gel up with the employees, and the productivity will go down at the end of the day. So there needs to be a right size to the controls when it comes to security programs. Not everybody needs security like a military organization or like a CIA, right? It really depends at the end of the day. how big is the business, what exactly you're trying to protect, and what are the level of security that you actually need at the end of the day. uh, Obviously, don't try to do everything at once. There needs to be a crawl before run approach. So consult with people who have done this before. Like, so I've done this before for a lot of organizations. Talk to your peers. So for example, if you're a business today out there, uh, which has peers who have actually gone ahead and implemented cybersecurity programs, talk with them. Talk with how businesses of same size has done this before. The good thing about consultants is, again, we have worked with a lot of different sizes of clients. I've worked with big banks to like startups, so I've seen the spectrum of what one spectrum to other spectrum looks like. Uh, so that's a good experience to kind of have. Creating a roadmap is very important, because again, not these controls cannot be achieved at the same point of time. There needs to be some way to phase this out at the end of the day, and outsource when you can, right? It's not everything needs to be, you don't need to have a full size cybersecurity team in house. You can outsource a lot of these things if you don't have expertise in house, which actually talks to our next slide around how do you source a cybersecurity team. So on the right hand side, I've actually got some cool statistics about how security teams are formed. Again, there is, in the bottom right, you will see a statistics which actually says the number of IT security staff per IT members, right? So if you have a IT size of 10 people, IT team of 10 people, how many cybersecurity people should you actually have? And it's divided by sectors. That's a cool fact to have when you're sourcing the numbers. But I generally say start with these three questions, right? Again, what are you trying to protect, and do you know how to do that? Because if you do know that, you can potentially get someone internally within the team to get that done, right? So knowing what to protect and knowing what controls to be put in place, important piece. Second, do you know how to meet your customers and your investors' cybersecurity requirements? Again, as I said, lot of companies today have actually gone ahead and gone for a cybersecurity program because they have been given these requirements from their customers and investors, right? So it's very important to kind of understand, do you know how to meet these requirements? And obviously the last thing is around, do you know how to does your team today have the bandwidth, or do you have the gap to actually accommodate all these responsibilities? So today, if you were to repurpose some of your engineers to say from now on you also have security responsibilities, do they actually have the bandwidth to do that, right? So all these three questions are going to dictate how and when you outsource to an external provider, whether you go to with a train the trainer kind of approach, where you come bring a consultant in to train your people, and then they are the ones who are executing cybersecurity responsibilities, or you completely outsource, right? There's a statistics up there around how many people are completely outsourcing versus how many people are outsourcing, are keeping it everything in house, right? And this is a very interesting problem to tackle. We have dealt with a lot of first-time CISOs who are coming in and setting up their organization. So they often ask us, how big should my team be? What are the capabilities I need to have? Again, these are the three basic principles that we start with before coming to that. What exactly is the number of team members that they're looking at? Now, where to go from here? Again, this is one of the last slides that I have before I hand it over to Sharon. Again, getting the foundation started, that's very critical. So policies and standards, these are the main documentation, these are the main controls that will mandate what are the security requirements of your organization. Awareness programs, again, very important, because whatever you do in security, one of the big thing is to communicate that with employees, right? Employees need to be aware of them, because if they were not aware of it, they are probably not practicing this security controls. So for example, if employees do not know not to click on phishing emails, as an example, they'll probably end up exposing your organization, right? So awareness programs, again, very important. Security technologies, again, you need to have, you don't need to have $1 million out of cybersecurity products out there, but you need to have the basics. You need to have antivirus, you need to have some kind of a security monitoring, a continuous monitoring of your infrastructure. You need to have the basics figured out, right? Again, which is security monitoring as well, right? Because without, you might have really good preventive controls, but if nobody's watching the doors of people coming in and going out, you might be exposing yourself to unnecessary threats. And hardening of your infrastructure, again, these are quick wins. There are a lot of guides out there in the market. There are tons of industry standards out there in the market that talk about infrastructure hardening. These are very easy to do, again, depending on the size and complexity of an organization, and again, what you're trying to protect. You don't need to have the same level of hardening for everything out there. It really depends what are you trying to protect, and what exactly is driving the business at the end of the day. Talk to peer companies who have done this before. Again, as we said before, talk to companies, talk to consultants who have always, who has seen this before, who has done this before for different clients. Talk to your business peers who have implemented this. You'll hear about some real challenges, real pain points. There can be some good learnings out of that. Train your engineers, IT folks, if you have the bandwidth to do it. If you have employees who are technical enough and who have bandwidth to pick this work up, train your guys to actually execute the cybersecurity roles. So with that, this is my end of presentation. I know we had 10 to 15 minutes, so I think next up is Sharon, but I'm looking forward to connecting with all of you. Connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me an email. We can take any of the conversations offline after this as well.